Do you ever leave a family gathering feeling more stressed than when you arrived? Or find yourself emotionally drained after dealing with certain relatives? You're not alone. As we grow older, protecting our peace and health becomes more important than ever. Toxic relationships, even within the family, can quietly harm both your mental and physical well-being. But here's the good news. By identifying the types of relatives who might be silently impacting your happiness and learning how to set healthy boundaries, you can reclaim your energy and peace of mind. And trust me, relative number 5 will completely change the way you think about family dynamics. So stick around. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more life-changing advice tailored for seniors like you. Now, let's explore the first type of relative that might be affecting your well-being and what you can do about it. 1. The guilt-tripping relative. As you grow older, relationships with family should bring comfort and joy, but for many seniors, certain relatives turn those moments into sources of stress and emotional strain. Do you have someone in your life who constantly makes you feel guilty? It could be a child, sibling, or even a grandchild who uses phrases like, "After everything I've done for you," or "You're letting the family down if you don't help." These words might be framed as love, but they're designed to manipulate you into saying yes when your heart says no. For many seniors, guilt-tripping relatives can feel impossible to confront. After all, you've likely spent a lifetime taking care of your loved ones, and saying no might feel selfish. But here's the truth. Constantly giving in to guilt drains your emotional energy and leaves you feeling exhausted and resentful. This kind of stress can have real consequences on your health, from sleepless nights to increased anxiety and even physical symptoms like high blood pressure. Take Susan, a 72-year-old retired teacher, as an example. Her son, in his late 40s, constantly leaned on her for financial support, often playing the guilt card by saying, "Mom, if you don't help me, I'll lose my apartment." Despite living on a fixed income herself, Susan felt she couldn't say no. Over time, she started skipping social activities she loved, cutting back on groceries, and feeling constantly overwhelmed. The stress began to affect her health, and she developed chronic headaches and fatigue. If you're nodding along, thinking this sounds familiar, know that there's hope. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect. Here's a simple but powerful response you can use. "I love you, but I need to take care of myself too. I can't help you with this, but I'm happy to support you in other ways." For example, instead of giving money, offer advice or point them toward resources that can help them become more independent. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but the more you practice saying no, the easier it becomes. Susan, for instance, eventually sat down with her son and explained her situation. She reassured him that she cared deeply but needed to prioritize her own well-being. To her surprise, he didn't react as badly as she feared. In fact, their relationship improved because the new boundaries allowed Susan to interact with her son without the resentment that had been building for years. Another strategy is to pause before responding. If a guilt-tripping relative asks for something, you don't have to answer right away. Say, "Let me think about it," and take time to decide whether helping is truly feasible for you. This space gives you control over the situation and prevents impulsive, guilt-driven decisions. Finally, it's important to remember that your well-being matters. You've spent decades taking care of others, but now is the time to focus on your own peace and happiness. Protecting yourself from manipulative tactics doesn't mean you love your family any less. It simply means you're choosing to live your golden years with less stress and more joy. Have you experienced a guilt-tripping relative? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to take their first steps toward setting healthy boundaries. Up next, we'll discuss another type of relative you might want to avoid, the one who always thinks they're right. Let's dive in. 2. The always right relative. Have you ever sat through a family dinner only to hear a relative repeatedly tell you how to live your life? You shouldn't eat that. I told you this would happen. If only you had listened to me. For many seniors, the always right relative is a constant presence. Someone who seems to believe they know more about your health, lifestyle, and even your personal choices than you do. While their comments might be framed as advice or concern, they often feel dismissive and undermining. For example, Margaret, a 68-year-old grandmother from Ohio, often found herself at odds with her younger sister during family gatherings. Her sister constantly questioned Margaret's decisions, criticizing her diet, her choice of hobbies, and even how she spent her retirement savings. "You're wasting your time knitting when you could be walking more," her sister would say. Margaret, who had worked hard her entire life, started second-guessing herself even when she knew she was making decisions that brought her joy and peace. The problem with always right relatives is that their constant need to correct or critique can erode your confidence. Over time, you may find yourself hesitating to speak up, worrying that your opinions will be dismissed. This dynamic creates unnecessary stress and can make you feel invisible in your own life. But here's the truth. You've spent decades building wisdom through your own experiences. You know what works for you better than anyone else. Navigating interactions with an always right relative begins with recognizing that their opinions are just that, opinions. They don't define you, nor do they hold the ultimate authority over your life. The next time you encounter this type of relative, try responding with calm but firm communication. For instance, when Margaret's sister criticized her knitting again, Margaret gently replied, "I appreciate your concern, but I enjoy knitting. It relaxes me and keeps my hands active. It works for me, and I'm confident in my choice." By asserting herself without anger or defensiveness, Margaret not only diffused the situation, but also reclaimed her sense of control. It's also helpful to set boundaries early. If you know a conversation is veering into territory where you feel judged, steer it in a different direction. For example, if your relative starts criticizing your eating habits, you can say, "Thanks for your input, but I'd rather talk about something else. How's your garden coming along?" Redirecting the conversation helps maintain peace while signaling that certain topics are off limits. Another strategy is to limit your exposure if these interactions consistently leave you feeling drained. Spend time with family members who lift you up, not those who bring you down. As seniors, your energy is precious, and it's entirely okay to protect it by choosing relationships that add value to your life. Have you ever dealt with an always right relative? How did you handle their constant advice? Let us know in the comments. Remember, your voice and choices matter, and no one knows your life better than you do. Next, let's talk about another tricky type of family member, the one who always seems to ask for money. Stay tuned. 3. The money-leeching relative. For many seniors, one of the hardest conversations to navigate with family members involves money. Maybe you've experienced this yourself, a relative calling out of the blue with an emergency that only your financial help can solve. It often starts with something like, "I don't know who else to turn to," or "If I can't pay this, I'll be in serious trouble." They might even remind you of past sacrifices or make you feel guilty for saying no. While helping family is natural, dealing with a relative who constantly asks for money without repayment or gratitude can become a heavy burden, especially if you're on a fixed income. Take Robert, a retired 74-year-old from California, for example. His niece frequently called him for financial help, citing various emergencies, car repairs, rent payments, and even vacations she insisted were necessary for her mental health. At first, Robert felt it was his duty to help. He loved his niece and wanted to support her. But over time, the requests grew larger, and Robert began to feel taken advantage of. "I realized I was skipping meals just to make sure I had enough to send her money," he said. "It wasn't sustainable, and it started affecting my own health." The reality is, constantly giving in to financial demands can lead to significant strain, both emotionally and financially. For seniors who have worked hard their entire lives to build their savings, this dynamic often leaves them feeling drained and resentful. Worse, it can cause tension within the family, especially when other relatives notice the one-sided nature of these transactions. If you're facing a money-leeching relative, it's essential to remember one key fact: your financial stability and well-being come first. You've worked hard to earn your retirement, and your savings are meant to support your needs, not enable someone else's financial habits. Protecting yourself starts with setting clear boundaries, and it's not as daunting as it sounds. One effective way to handle this situation is to offer support that doesn't involve money. For instance, the next time a relative asks for financial help, you might say, "I'm sorry, but I'm not in a position to help financially right now. However, I can help you look for resources or create a budget to get through this." This approach shows care without putting your finances at risk. By shifting the focus away from money, you can guide them toward more sustainable solutions. Robert eventually adopted this strategy with his niece. He explained his financial limitations and offered to help her find a part-time job to supplement her income. At first, she was upset, but over time she realized he wasn't cutting her off out of spite. He was encouraging her to stand on her own. Their relationship improved because the resentment Robert felt began to fade, and his niece started to take more responsibility for her situation. Another useful approach is to set firm limits. If you've lent money before and haven't been repaid, make it clear that you can't continue until past debts are settled. For example, you might say, "I'm happy to discuss helping again in the future, but I need to see some progress on the money you already owe me first." This encourages accountability while protecting you from further loss. It's also worth considering that some requests might be rooted in deeper issues, like poor money management or financial illiteracy. Connecting your relative to local resources, such as community organizations or financial counseling services, can empower them to take control of their finances without relying on you. Many nonprofits and senior centers even offer free workshops on budgeting and managing debt. Finally, don't underestimate the power of saying no. It might feel uncomfortable initially, but the relief you'll feel when you prioritize your needs is worth it. You've spent years building a life of stability and deserve to enjoy your retirement without unnecessary stress. Saying no doesn't mean you don't love your family. It means you're taking care of yourself so you can be there for them in ways that truly matter. Have you ever faced a relative who always seemed to need money? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments. It might inspire others who are struggling with the same issue. In the next section, we'll explore a different type of relative that can also affect your peace of mind: the drama queen. Let's dive in. 4. The drama queen. Every family seems to have at least one, the relative who turns minor inconveniences into full-blown crises, thriving on chaos and constantly dragging others into their storm of emotions. Whether it's an exaggerated complaint about a forgotten phone call or a dramatic retelling of a harmless disagreement, the drama queen thrives on creating conflict. For seniors, dealing with this type of relative can be exhausting, leaving you emotionally drained and robbing you of the peace you deserve in your golden years. Take Helen, a 70-year-old retiree from Florida, for example. Her niece would call her several times a week with long, emotional stories about disputes with friends, imagined slights from co-workers, or arguments with her partner. Helen initially tried to mediate, offering advice and taking sides, but it only seemed to fuel the fire. "Every time I got off the phone, I felt like I'd run a marathon," she recalls. "It started affecting my sleep, and I began dreading her calls." The problem with drama queens is that their constant turmoil doesn't just stay in their world, it spills over into yours. For seniors, this can lead to unnecessary stress, which has been linked to numerous health issues, from high blood pressure to weakened immunity. Over time, the emotional energy spent managing someone else's drama leaves less room for your own happiness and well-being. So, how can you protect yourself while still maintaining a sense of compassion? The key lies in setting boundaries and practicing empathetic detachment. For Helen, this meant shifting how she responded to her niece. Instead of getting involved in every crisis, she started saying, "I'm here to listen, but I can't solve this for you." This approach allowed Helen to provide support without being pulled into the chaos. It's also important to limit your involvement. If a conversation starts veering into drama, redirect it gently. For instance, Helen began steering calls toward lighter topics like shared memories or family news. "I realized I didn't have to engage in every story. I could guide the conversation to something that didn't leave me feeling drained," she explains. By prioritizing her peace, Helen found she had more energy for her own interests, like gardening and volunteering at her local library. Her niece, meanwhile, started seeking advice elsewhere, often realizing that some situations resolved themselves without Helen's intervention. Do you have a drama queen in your family? How have you managed their emotional storms? Let us know in the comments. Next, we'll uncover a surprising type of relative who might be affecting your peace: the unreliable one. Stay tuned. 5. The unreliable relative. Have you ever planned your day around a promise a family member made, only for them to cancel at the last minute? Or worse, not show up at all without an explanation? For many seniors, unreliable relatives can be one of the most frustrating dynamics to deal with. Whether it's someone who promised to help with chores, attend a family gathering, or simply call back, their lack of follow-through leaves you feeling disappointed, and over time, less trusting of their word. For Martha, a 73-year-old widow from Colorado, her nephew frequently let her down. He often assured her he'd help around the house on weekends, trimming the hedges, fixing a leaky faucet, but rarely followed through. "I'd rearrange my schedule, waiting for him to show up, but then he'd text hours later with an excuse," Martha recalls. "It wasn't just inconvenient, it hurt because I felt like my time didn't matter to him." Unreliable relatives create more than inconvenience. They disrupt trust. When their broken promises pile up, you may find yourself feeling resentful or even questioning your own worth in their lives. For seniors, this can also impact daily routines, particularly when the missed commitments involve tasks you depend on others to help with. To handle this situation, it's important to adjust your expectations and take back control over your time. Martha realized that waiting on her nephew's promises was draining her energy and leaving her frustrated. So she decided to shift her mindset. Instead of relying on him to help, she began hiring a neighborhood handyman for small jobs. And when her nephew offered assistance, she replied kindly but honestly, "I appreciate the thought, but I've already made other arrangements." This change didn't just free up Martha's schedule, it also improved her relationship with her nephew. By no longer counting on him to fulfill every promise, she avoided the constant cycle of disappointment. When he did follow through, it felt like a pleasant surprise rather than an overdue obligation. Managing expectations doesn't mean giving up on people. It simply means protecting your peace by recognizing their patterns. If you have an unreliable relative, let them know you value their intentions, but won't plan around their promises anymore. A simple statement like, "I'll plan my day assuming you might not make it, but you're always welcome to join," can set a kind but firm boundary. Have you ever had to adjust your expectations with a family member? Share your story in the comments below. It might just help someone else find peace in a similar situation. Up next, we'll dive into the most shocking type of relative you should avoid after 60. Stay tuned. 6. The energy vampire. Do you ever leave a conversation with a relative feeling utterly drained, as if they've sucked the life out of you? These energy vampires are often family members who seem to thrive on negativity, constantly complaining, rehashing old grievances, or dumping their problems on you without any interest in solutions. For seniors, dealing with this type of relative can be particularly challenging. You want to support your loved ones, but their relentless negativity leaves you emotionally exhausted and unable to focus on your own well-being. Let's take Jack, a 69-year-old grandfather from Texas, as an example. His brother Tom called almost daily, venting about everything from politics to minor disagreements with neighbors. Jack tried to offer advice, but Tom wasn't interested in solutions. He just wanted someone to unload on, Jack shared. After every call, I felt completely wiped out, like I'd just run a marathon, but without the satisfaction. The problem with energy vampires is that their negativity can have real consequences for your health. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to negative emotions from others can increase stress levels, disrupt sleep, and even weaken your immune system. For seniors who already face natural age-related health challenges, this added stress can be particularly harmful. If you're dealing with an energy vampire in your life, it's crucial to set boundaries and protect your emotional energy. One effective strategy is to limit interactions. Jack, for instance, began scheduling calls with his brother instead of answering every time. By setting a specific day and time, he could prepare himself mentally for the conversation and ensure he wasn't overwhelmed by too many negative interactions in one week. Another approach is to reframe conversations. When Jack noticed his brother spiraling into complaints, he gently redirected the discussion by saying, "Let's focus on something positive today. What's been going well for you?" This shift not only lightened the mood, but also encouraged Tom to think differently about his own situation. Engaging in group activities or shared hobbies is another way to diffuse the intensity of one-on-one interactions with an energy vampire. Jack invited Tom to join a local walking group, which gave their conversations a more uplifting tone and provided Tom with a new outlet for his frustrations. "It wasn't a perfect fix," Jack admitted, "but it made our time together feel more balanced." Remember, protecting your peace doesn't mean cutting people off completely. It means finding ways to manage their energy without letting it overwhelm you. You've earned the right to prioritize your own happiness and health. Have you ever had an energy vampire in your life? How did you handle it? Let us know in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else to take control of their emotional well-being. Next, we'll wrap up with a powerful conclusion to tie everything together. Don't miss it. As you navigate life after 60, protecting your peace and health is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Toxic relationships, whether with a guilt-tripping relative, an energy vampire, or someone unreliable, can take a toll on your emotional and physical well-being. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-care and a necessary step to enjoying your golden years with joy and balance. You deserve relationships that uplift and support you, not ones that drain your energy. By taking control of these dynamics, you're paving the way for a life filled with peace and fulfillment. Which type of relative resonates most with your experiences? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to share this video with others who might need this wisdom.